All right, so get this.
Okay.
We're talking about a tiny island,
Mm.
completely untouched by the modern world. And the people there could be living in the Stone Age.
Seriously.
Yeah, North Sentinel Island.
Oh, wow.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into its mysteries.
Cool.
You've probably seen that image.
Which one?
The Sentinelese warrior,
Oh, yeah.
facing down a helicopter.
It's pretty intense.
I know, right?
It really captures your imagination.
It does.
Like, this island is a living time capsule.
Yeah.
You know, like a glimpse into our past.
Crazy that it's just right there.
In our modern world.
I know.
Mm.
It's wild.
So to guide us through this, we've got a YouTube video essay,
From who?
Drew Varothy.
Okay, cool.
And it goes into some historical accounts and observations, trying to understand who the North Sentinelese are, where they came from, why they want to remain isolated.
It's a fascinating story.
It is.
It raises so many questions.
It really does.
About progress.
And, you know, what it even means to be civilized.
I mean, they could be direct descendants of some of the first humans who left Africa.
You know, that's what the evidence suggests. Boy, they could be carrying traces of human history.
Wow.
From 70,000 years ago.
70,000 years.
They could have witnessed the dawn of humanity.
That's mind-boggling.
I know.
So while the rest of the world was developing agriculture, metalworking, complex societies, they were forging their own path.
Entirely dependent on nature.
Wow.
They're hunter-gatherers.
Right.
Living off the land and the sea.
Yeah.
No agriculture.
Wow.
No metalworking.
It really challenges our notions of what's necessary for survival, huh?
Doesn't it?
It makes you wonder what we could learn from them.
Totally.
About living sustainably.
Yeah, especially today.
Especially with all our environmental concerns.
For sure.
But their story is also marked by tragedy and conflict, especially when the outside world has tried to make contact.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, the video mentions John Allen Chow, an American missionary, who went to the island in 2018.
Yeah, his story is a cautionary tale.
It is.
You know, highlighting the dangers of approaching the Sentinelese without understanding their history and culture.
Yeah, he went there illegally.
He did.
And he thought he needed to convert them to Christianity.
It's interesting.
I read that he brought them gifts like fish and a football.
A football.
A football.
It's kind of absurd.
It is.
They probably have no idea what that is.
No concept of organized sports.
He documented his attempts in his diary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he details how he offered these gifts, including a Bible.
Oh, wow.
He called the island Satan's last stronghold.
Wow, that's chilling.
Yeah.
So how'd they react?
To his attempts at contact.
Yeah.
With hostility.
Yeah, I figured as much.
They fired arrows at him.
Oh.
Made it clear they wanted him to leave.
I wonder what was going through his mind at that moment. Did he think he could actually change their way of life?
I mean, he persisted despite the danger.
If he didn't leave.
He didn't. And tragically, he was killed by the Sentinelese.
That's sad.
It sparked international attention.
I bet.
You know, and it reignited that debate.
About
the ethics of contacting isolated tribes.
Like the Sentinelese.
Exactly.
This isn't the first encounter they've had with the outside world, though, right?
No, not at all.
There's a history of documented encounters.
Yeah, some going back centuries. Accounts from as early as the 2nd century AD describe them.
Seriously?
Yeah, but these early records often called them cannibals.
Oh, wow.
Hard to know how accurate that was.
Yeah.
But it definitely shaped the perception.
Yes, they're hostile.
Hostile and dangerous.
Right.
And this perception persisted through events like the 1867 shipwreck.
What happened there?
Survivors landed on the island.
And
they were attacked.
It's like this pattern of misunderstanding and fear.
I know, right?
Each encounter seems to reinforce the idea that they are inherently aggressive.
It does seem that way.
But is that really the whole story?
That's the question.
Like, is their aggression a defense mechanism?
Could be.
Or is it something more?
Right.
How can we even hope to answer that question?
I mean,
we don't even speak their language.
A language barrier is huge.
It seems like the biggest barrier
to understanding them.
But there have been attempts at understanding them.
Through observation.
Yeah.
And limited interaction.
Right.
There was even an incident.
Oh.
In the late 19th century.
What happened?
A British colonial administrator.
Okay.
Maurice Fiddle Portman. Took things a bit too far.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So Portman led an expedition to North Sentinel Island in 1880.
Okay.
With this goal of making contact. He wanted to civilize them.
Civilize them?
Yeah.
That's a loaded term.
Especially in the context of colonialism.
I mean, what did he do?
He ended up kidnapping an elderly couple and 4 children from the island.
Kidnapping?
And brought them back to Port Blair.
It's awful.
It was a deeply unethical act.
Even for that time period.
Yeah, and tragically, the elderly couple died.
Oh, no.
Soon after arriving in Port Blair.
From what?
Likely from diseases.
That they had no immunity to.
Exactly.
That's heartbreaking.
It really highlights the consequences of forced contact.
And the danger of those diseases.
To a population that's never been exposed.
It's just sad.
Portman eventually returned the children to the island.
Oh, okay.
But you can imagine the trauma.
And confusion.
This caused them.
Of course.
And it likely further cemented the Sentinelese' distrust.
Of outsiders.
Yeah.
So Portman's actions were a major setback.
They were.
In terms of establishing any kind of peaceful relationship.
Totally.
But people kept trying to make contact, right?
Yeah. They did.
Even into the 20th century.
Into the 20th century.
But what kind of success?
I mean, varying degrees. The video talks about an Indian anthropologist.
Okay.
Trellernath Pandit.
All right.
He led several expeditions to the island.
When?
Starting in the 1960s.
Okay.
He took a different approach, though.
What do you do?
He started by leaving gifts.
Oh, okay.
And observing their behavior from a distance.
Interesting.
It sounds like he was trying to build trust slowly.
Respectfully.
Yeah, rather than forcing interaction.
So how did that work out?
Well, there were a few instances where the Sentinelese seemed to reciprocate.
Oh, really?
They accepted gifts.
Wow.
And they engaged
in what
appeared to be friendly interactions.
So it's possible for them to interact peacefully with outsiders.
It does seem that way.
That's amazing.
One notable instance was in 1991.
Okay.
During an expedition led by another Indian anthropologist.
Who was that?
Madhumala Chattopadhyay.
Okay.
The Sentinelese accepted coconuts from the expedition team.
Right.
And there was even a moment where a Sentinelese woman stopped a man from firing an arrow at the team.
That's incredible.
It is.
It really suggests there's more to their social structure than we might assume.
You know, and that violence isn't their only response to the outside world.
But these moments of peaceful contact didn't last.
Unfortunately not.
Like they decided they'd had enough.
After 1991, they became increasingly hostile.
So any interaction.
Yeah, like they were drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And saying this far and no further.
And then in 2004.
After the tsunami.
Yeah, the Indian Ocean tsunami.
They attacked a helicopter.
Wow.
That was sent to check on them.
So we know very little about them.
We have these glimpses.
Into their lives.
Moments of connection and conflict.
Yeah, but the full picture
remains elusive.
It's a puzzle with only a few pieces filled in.
It really is.
How do we even begin to understand them?
When they clearly want to be left alone.
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's one we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll look more at what we know and don't know.
And examine those ethical dilemmas
surrounding our interactions.
This the Sentinelese.
It's a fascinating story, and it really makes you think.
About a lot of things.
Yeah, stay tuned, listeners.
This deep dive is far from over. Welcome back to our deep dive.
Into the mystery of North Sentinel Island.
We've been exploring the history of the Sentinelese people and their fierce determination to remain isolated
from the outside world.
It's a story that really makes you think.
It does.
It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths.
About our own assumptions.
About progress and civilization.
Absolutely.
We left off talking about the challenges of understanding a culture
that has chosen to remain separate
from the rest of the world.
We have these glimpses into their lives.
These moments of connection.
And conflict.
But so much about their beliefs, their language, their social structures
remains a mystery.
And that mystery fuels this debate
about how we should interact with them.
If at all, should we respect their isolation and leave them be?
Or do we have an obligation
to try and establish contact?
Right.
Potentially sharing our knowledge and technology.
It's a tough question.
It is.
With no easy answers.
There are compelling arguments on both sides.
There are.
Let's start by examining the case for contact.
Okay.
Those who advocate for reaching out to the Sentinelese often point to the potential benefits
of sharing advancements
in medicine, agriculture,
and communication.
I can see that perspective.
Yeah.
We've made incredible strides in these areas.
It's tempting to think
that we could improve their lives.
Yeah.
Maybe even extend their lifespans.
By sharing what we know.
Like imagine if we could give them access to basic medical care.
Or introduce them to agriculture.
That could lead to more food.
More reliable food sources.
The history of contact between industrialized societies and isolated tribes
is not good.
It's filled with cautionary tales.
So many.
The Great Andamanese tribe, mentioned in the video,
their population was decimated
after contact with the British tribes.
From diseases.
They had no immunity.
It's a stark reminder
of the potential harm.
Even from well-intentioned contact.
The introduction of diseases
to a population with no prior exposure
could be devastating.
Especially for the Sentinelese.
It's not just disease, though.
Right.
Exposing them to modern goods
and concepts
could disrupt their social structures,
create dependency,
and
erode their traditional way of life.
The Jarowa tribe,
another indigenous group,
and the Andaman Islands
face so many challenges.
Like what?
Disease outbreaks,
addiction,
cultural erosion.
After increased contact with the outside world,
it's a lot.
Those examples really highlight that argument against contact.
Respecting their right to self-determination.
They've chosen to remain isolated.
And many argue we have to honor that choice.
Even if it means missing out on those potential benefits.
It's hard.
We associate progress with advancement.
And improving lives.
But maybe the most compassionate thing
is to leave them alone.
It's a complex dilemma.
It really is.
This case study challenges our assumptions about progress.
And civilization.
We tend to view our technological advancements
in complex societies
as like the pinnacle of human achievement.
Right.
But the Sentinelese offer a different perspective.
They do.
They've managed to survive
and thrive
on this small island for thousands of years.
Living in balance with nature.
They've achieved a kind of sustainability
that we dream of.
It's pretty amazing.
It is.
Makes their story so thought-provoking.
It really does.
It makes us confront our values.
And question if our pursuit of progress
has come at a cost.
Maybe.
You mentioned the Sentinelese challenge our definition of civilized.
I did.
It makes me think about that idea of the noble savage.
I know it's a problematic term.
It is.
It romanticizes indigenous cultures.
And ignores their complexities.
Right.
But is there some truth to the idea that societies untouched by industrialization might have valuable insights?
Into living in balance.
With nature.
Which we seem to have lost.
Totally.
It's a great question.
How do we avoid falling into that trap?
Of romanticizing them?
While still acknowledging their way of life might hold lessons for us.
It's about balance.
Yeah.
Recognizing them as complex people.
With their own history and culture.
We can't assume they have no problems.
Well, we can learn from their resilience.
Their adaptability.
Their deep connection to their environment.
Absolutely.
It's about respecting their differences.
While acknowledging our shared humanity.
Exactly.
And that leads to the question.
Which one?
What responsibilities do we have towards isolated tribes in the modern world?
What are our options here?
I mean, we can't just pretend they don't exist.
Right.
The Indian government.
What do?
They have a hands-off but keep an eye out policy.
Okay.
They have a 5-kilometer exclusion zone around the island.
To prevent contact.
And protect both the Sentinelese and outsiders.
So no one can go there.
They monitor the island from a distance.
To make sure they're okay.
But there's no interaction.
Protective isolation.
You could call it that.
Is that the best approach?
It's the least intrusive.
Okay.
It acknowledges their desire to be left alone.
But it also raises questions about our role.
As stewards of the planet.
And our responsibility to protect vulnerable populations.
That's a tricky balance.
Safeguarding their way of life.
While recognizing their right to self-determination.
No easy answers.
The Sentinelese challenge us
to think critically
about our assumptions,
to grapple with ethical dilemmas,
to consider the consequences of our actions.
It's a reminder that the world is a vast and diverse place.
And not everyone wants to live the way we do.
Maybe that's okay.
Maybe there's beauty in that diversity.
In the existence of cultures untouched by our modern world.
Maybe the greatest lesson they offer
is what?
Humility.
Humility.
The recognition that we don't have all the answers.
And sometimes the best thing to do
is to simply observe.
To respect.
And to learn.
Makes you wonder what the future holds.
For them.
Will they be able to stay isolated?
In an increasingly interconnected world.
That's a question we'll explore in the final part.
We'll delve into the broader implications of their story.
What their existence might teach us about ourselves.
Our relationship with nature.
And the future of humanity.
It's going to be good.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
It has.
Listeners, we'll be right back.
To continue our exploration.
Of the Sentinelese.
And the profound questions they raise.
Welcome back, listeners.
We've been on quite a journey.
Exploring the mysteries of North Sentinel Island.
And grappling with these complex questions.
About the Sentinelese people and their isolation.
It's a story that really stays with you.
It does.
It forces us to confront our assumptions
about progress,
civilization,
and what it really means to live a good life.
For sure.
In the last part, we talked about the noble savage concept and how it can be problematic.
It's easy to romanticize the Sentinelese,
to view them as living in some sort of harmony with nature.
Yeah.
But I think there's a danger in dismissing their way of life as just primitive or irrelevant.
The Sentinelese are not relics of the past.
Right.
They are a living example of human adaptability.
And resilience.
They've thrived on a small island for thousands of years.
Facing challenges we can only imagine.
And developing their own solutions.
What could we learn from them?
Especially as we deal with our own environmental crisis.
And the consequences of our unsustainable lifestyles.
It's a good question.
Their story highlights the importance of looking beyond our own cultural lens.
Recognizing that there are other ways of being in the world.
Other ways of relating to nature.
Other definitions of success.
They've shown us it's possible to live sustainably.
To thrive without constant consumption.
And the pursuit of more.
It's pretty remarkable.
In their rejection of the modern world.
They've become a symbol of resistance.
To a certain model of progress.
Challenging the idea that technological advancement and material wealth are the ultimate measures of success.
That's a powerful message.
Especially in a world dominated by consumerism.
And globalization.
What if there's another way?
What if true progress is about finding balance?
Living in harmony with nature.
Preserving cultural diversity.
Respecting different ways of life.
It makes you think. It does. Okay, so let's bring this back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
Why should you care about this small tribe?
On a remote island in the Bay of Bengal.
What's the takeaway?
The Sentinelese story reminds us
of what?
That the world is more complex
and mysterious
than we often realize.
It's a reminder to stay curious,
to question our assumptions,
and be open to the possibility
that we don't have all the answers.
They teach us that there are still pockets of the unknown,
cultures untouched by our modern ways.
Stories waiting to be told.
And sometimes the most valuable lessons
come from those who are most different from us.
It's true.
Their story challenges us to think about our place in the world.
Our relationship with nature.
And the kind of future we want to create.
For ourselves and for generations to come.
They remind us that progress isn't always linear.
That there are alternative paths.
And sometimes the wisest course of action
is to observe.
To respect.
And to learn.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive
into the mystery of North Sentinel Island,
I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
The next time you encounter something that challenges your worldview,
something that seems foreign or even threatening,
remember the Sentinelese.
Don't turn away.
Lean in.
Ask questions.
Seek understanding.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
About the world and yourself.
And who knows?
Maybe in understanding those who are different.
We might find a way to build a better future.
A more sustainable future. A more compassionate future for all.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, listeners.
You'll be back soon.
With another deep dive into a fascinating topic.
Until then,
keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep those minds open.